Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to take you through a couple of examples of how you could use the stack panel for laying out controls in a line of business application. So let's get started. Select new project, I'm going to be doing WPF. I'll call this one StackPanelLOB. Okay, there's our window. Now for the first example, I'm going to just use a text block and a text box, similar to what I did in the grid line of business demo. And I'll show you how I could arrange them using a stack panel instead. So I'm just going to drag across a text block and a text box. Okay, zoom a bit on the XAML here for you as well. So as we can see, we've got two controls inside our grid. Now they're not lined or anything like that in particular, just sitting where they are because of the margins that are on them. So I can move that around, you'll see the margin changes. There's no direct relationship between the two. What I'd like to be able to do is treat them essentially as a group, and I'm going to use a stack panel to do that for me. Now you can drag a stack panel onto your window from the toolbox, it is there. I'm not going to do that because I find that a little bit more actually confusing, to be honest, than just typing it straight into the XAML. So I'm going to go straight down here into the XAML, create a new line below the opening grid tag and start typing in stack panel. Use tab there, put the close in. So what I want to do is actually have those two controls, the text block and the text box, wrapped by the stack panel. So I'm going to select the closing stack panel tag and cut that, go below my controls and paste that in. So now we've got stack panel, then the text block, text box, and then the closing stack panel tag as well. Now you could go and indent these because that's the way they should appear. They shouldn't just appear in a line like this, but there is a feature inside Visual Studio that can make our lives a bit easier for that sort of thing. So I'm going to take advantage of that now, and I'm going to go up to the edit menu, select advanced, format document, and what it will do, as you can see there, is put all the indentation in for us, which is great. Okay, so now we've got these two controls inside of a stack panel, but they certainly don't look to be inside when we look at the main window. In fact, our text box is just on the edge of the window here, you can barely see it. So what's causing that to happen when we actually wrap them inside a stack panel? And the answer is the actual layout controls or layout settings that we've got for each of these controls. So you can see, for example, we've got these huge margins. We've also got some other things like vertical and horizontal alignment, which we don't really need now that they're inside a stack panel. So let's start by getting rid of the margin on the first control. And you'll notice that the text block is now moved straight up to the top left-hand corner. That's where the stack panel actually is. Click on that, you'll see it. There's the stack panel, which is taking up the whole window. And we can see our horizontal and vertical alignment is saying left and top anyway, so it's now defaulting to that. As per the grid line of business video, I'm not going to reference the text block by its name, so I don't need it. It's surplus to what I'm going to be doing, so I'll just delete that out as well. And I do need the text, so that's going to be whatever we're going to be referring to. So let's call this one last name. Okay. Now for the text box, again I'm going to get rid of the margin just to start with, just so you can see what it does. There we go. And change its name from text box 1 to text box last name. If you recall, we do need the name, because that's why we're going to refer to what's typed in code later on. Okay, so that's actually now got the stack panel working a little bit more like I'd expect, but you'll see that the controls are stacked one on top of each other like pancakes. That's the default layout for a stack panel, which is this vertical arrangement. We want it to be horizontal, we're going across the screen, so we need to change the stack panel orientation. To do that, I'm going to go into the top line there of stack panel, put a space in, start typing orientation and press tab, choose horizontal with the down arrow key and tab again. And now we can see that the last name and the text box are alongside each other. So that's the improvement but it's not ideal because they're hard up against each other there. So what I could do is the same trick I did in the grid, and that's just simply set a margin of 5 for each of those controls, like so, and that lays them out much nicer. Now they're actually a group. So I can do all sorts of things with the stacked panel. I could resize it, move it, do all sorts of things with it. So for example, let's set the horizontal alignment to center and the vertical alignment to center. And there we go, we've got a last name field right smack in the middle of the form. And the way I've done it, if I just press F5 and show it to you, you'll see that as we resize a window, that last name field and its description always are in the center of the window. Okay, that's one example of how we could use the stack panel. Let's look at another really common scenario where you might want to use a stack panel, and that's when you've got an OK and a cancel button, or a save and a cancel button, or something like that on your window. So I'm going to drag 2 buttons onto the main window. I can do a little bit of housework with them first, so let's change the content, which is what's displayed on them. So I'm going to change that to OK, and make that one cancel. There we go. I'm going to get rid of the alignment, and I'm also going to change the margin for now to 0. I'll fix that. We'll change that later, but just leave it at 0 for the time being. Going to name the buttons. This is the OK button, so I'll call it button OK. I'm going to get rid of the vertical alignment reference, like so. That's my first button. Let's edit the second one. Again, get rid of the horizontal alignment reference. Let's get rid of the margin altogether on this one. And let's change the button name to button cancel. Again, I'll get rid of the vertical alignment, like so. So now we've got 2 buttons and they are directly on top of each other, which is kind of interesting. They're in the center by default, and that also means, of course, they're blocking our ability to see the text box and the text block below them. That's not going to do, so I'm obviously going to have to move them, but I want to move them as a group. So I'm going to use the same technique I used in that previous example with the text box. I'm going to create a stack panel, select the closing tag and cut it, and paste it below the buttons. Again, the indentation's not right, so I can fix that just by going up to Edit, Advanced, and Format. Okay, now the buttons are visible. They're at the top of the window there. You can see, again, think of that idea about the pancakes, so they're stacked on top of each other. That's not typically how we expect to find buttons at the bottom of our form. We expect them to be beside each other. So again, I'm going to have to use that trick of changing the orientation. So let's say orientation equals horizontal. That looks a little bit better. Now they're alongside each other, but I don't want them over on the left-hand side there. I want them down the bottom right-hand corner. And I can do that by setting the horizontal and vertical alignment for the stack panel. Remember, those controls, those 2 buttons belong to the stack panel. So when I move the stack panel, anything inside the stack panel will move with it. So you'll see what I mean in a moment. Let's set the horizontal alignment to right. And you can see now they're over the right-hand side of the window. And let's set the vertical alignment to bottom. Well, that's certainly looking a lot better, and that's closer to where we'd expect to find those buttons. But they're hard up against the edge of the actual window, if you see there. And that's not what we normally expect to see. The way the human eye works and the way we detect things like buttons, for example, is we look for the edges. And at the moment, we can't really clearly see those edges because of the way we've aligned things. So I'm going to fix it up now. I'm going to first of all add a margin of 5 pixels around the stack panel. So let's do that first. I'll say margin equals 5. Note that I'm still on the stack panel line here. And that's put a bit of a margin around here. It also has put a margin on the left and the top, but we can't see that. But there is one there. That's nearly fixed it, but we still have both the buttons hard up against each other here. which again is not what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing a little bit of white space between them. I'm going to fix that by going down to the first button. If you remember, I left the margin and I set it to 0 there. I'm going to change that to 5. And now it's going to bring the buttons in a little bit close, or a little bit into the form, but it's also going to split them up a bit. And we have a look there now, you can see they look great. You can see there's white space around them and between them. So they're now clearly identifiable as buttons. Let's see how it behaves when we actually run the project. So we'll press F5. There's our buttons in the corner. And because we set the horizontal and vertical alignments down towards the bottom right, no matter what size we resize that window, those controls are going to stay always in that bottom right hand corner, which is exactly the way the user would expect it to happen. Okay, have a go trying that out and see it for yourself. It's a great little tip and it works great with all your line of business applications.